to the Inside Connection podcast, powered by MediConnect. I am your host today, Lance O'Brien. Joined again, coming back, Lauren Yuran. How you doing?
Doing well, Lance. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Loving life, getting some nice weather. Hasn't rained a lot, Life's good.
Absolutely. Well, I know we're going to talk about enrollment periods today, but we're gearing up for one of them right now. So it's been a little bit busy here in the office, but that's always a good thing. Makes the day go fast. And, let's get to it. Let's talk about these enrollment periods.
Yeah, absolutely. So if this is your first time tuning in, you're not really sure who MediConnect is yet, we are the top-rated advisory firm in the state of Pennsylvania. We work with all the major carriers, and we focus on education. We want people to understand how Medicare works, how they can make their decisions, make right decisions, avoid penalties, potholes, all those types of things. There's no cost for our expert advice. There's no cost to work with us. And we're going to be with you not just at the very beginning of your Medicare journey, but Lauren, we're going to stick with people all the way through life's changes, Medicare changes, if they want us to. And again, our goal is to make Medicare simple. So as you mentioned, we're going to talk today about enrollment periods. And there's a couple of challenges when it comes to Medicare, right? So what's challenge number one?
Challenge number one is really, I think, what I see for a lot of people. What do I do? I'm not sure what to do.
Right. Yeah. We have a ton of people that will come to us and say, I've tried to do a little bit of research on this, right? Or they'll come to one of our seminars and they're like, this is just so overwhelming. I don't know what to do. And then that's usually followed up by a second thing, right?
That's absolutely correct. And that would be, I'm not sure when to do it. When do I make these decisions? When do I make these changes? When do I enroll? There's paperwork involved sometimes. It is not just a straight line, right? There's a lot of questions, a lot of confusion. And you were talking a little bit about, again, where and when. But the key to this is there's a lot of information out there as well. There's a lot of choices, which can, if you're doing your own research like you had spoken about before, can lead to a lot more confusion. You can get stuck in that Medicare maze, essentially.
Yeah, so you think about it, somebody that is on group health coverage right now, or maybe they're self-employed, they have the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, essentially for them, a lot of the work is being done. Like if you're on the ACA, they're creating the plans and, maybe you're going to an individual to help you, group coverage. But for them, they generally have two enrollment periods. They have their yearly enrollment period, and then if they switch jobs or have some kind of life event, they have a special enrollment period, right? So there's not that many moving pieces when it comes to those types of insurance. But when you get to Medicare, there's 5 enrollment periods, which means there's 5 potential answers to your second challenge, which is when do I do what I'm supposed to do? So what we want to do today is we really want to unpack those in these 2 segments. Probably in this first segment, we'll walk through the initial enrollment period and the general enrollment period, but we'll just kind of go with the flow. So let's talk about the initial enrollment period. What is that?
Well, the initial enrollment period, as Medicare likes to state, or the IEP, as they'll state.
Acronyms, right?
We speak in a lot of acronyms when it comes to the Medicare world, right? That's going to be that time around coming onto Medicare for the first time. So when you're turning 65, or if you're coming on with Medicare under 65 and you've been deemed with a disability, that A and B effective date. It's a 7-month window surrounding that time frame. So most commonly, we're seeing people that are turning 65. So the month of your birthday, right?
Right.
The 3 months prior, the month of your birthday, and the 3 months after your birthday, that's going to be your initial enrollment period window. It's a 7-month time frame. However, if you're born on the first of the month, they actually put you up a month. You'll get your Medicare active the month prior to that of your 65th birthday. But then any other date that you're born, you will be coming on that first of that month.
Yeah, and you referenced Part B, and to me, I think it's really the easiest way to understand the initial enrollment period as it comes to original Medicare. And what I mean by that is what we generally say is your initial enrollment period begins when you first enroll in Part B. So that could be pre-65 if you have Social Security disability for 24 consecutive months. then you can qualify if it's at age 65. But as you know, Lauren, some people, they go past the age of 65.
They
They're
do.
actively working, they have insurance, so they defer their Part B, but then maybe at age 66 and a half, full retirement age for most people right now, 67, 68, they decide that they want to go to Medicare. They're going to be able to have that initial enrollment period, that 7 month period of time. Now, Lauren, that 7 month window, that focuses primarily on original Medicare, right? Like the sign up for that. There's obviously some private insurance implications, right? Which we'll
Right.
get to in a few minutes, but that's really making sure that you sign up for Medicare at the right time.
Correct. Making sure that you sign up for Medicare at the right time. But again, you had talked, and I had talked about Part B. Did you get Part B at the right time? Did you get Part D at the right time? So the big theme that we're going to see going through all these enrollment periods really is that you're making sure that you're initiating coverage and initiating that B and your Part D for drugs are starting and that you're having the coverage so that you don't get a penalty.
Yeah.
Medicare likes to have these different enrollment periods in different windows, and they're requiring you to take certain kinds of coverage at bare minimum so that they don't charge you a penalty. So if you don't, fall into one of these enrollment periods and choose coverage, you could be penalized. And those penalties, whether it's a penalty for your Part B or a penalty for your Part D, they're going to stay with you as long as your Medicare stays with you, which is as long as you're going to be with us.
Yeah, so and we're going to get into in just a couple minutes here what happens if you miss that initial enrollment period, because then if you get outside of that 7 month window that you referenced, then what are your options, right? But really, this initial signing up for Medicare is a big decision. And I think a lot of people, again, we hear all the time, if I don't sign up for Medicare at 65, I'm going to get penalized, right? Or I have to sign up because that's what everybody does. And there's just so many rules and nuances, right? And people need to understand that when they sign up for Medicare initially, it's actually not through Medicare. It's through Social Security, so there's certain steps that they have to take there. And again, one of our big goals at the seminars we do and our individual one-on-one appointments, we want to make sure they understand all the facts around this initial enrollment period so they are signing up at the right time.
Correct. And I even know that I worked with a consumer where one of the rules is that during that initial enrollment period, you have to have something called credible coverage.
Yeah.
And that credible coverage, a lot of times, if you're with a group that's under 20 employees, that group plan could not be considered credible coverage.
Right.
So this gentleman did some research by himself and looked up and said, hey, if I'm working, I'm considered covered. I don't need to take my Medicare. Well, he owned his own company. He had 5 employees. So he was well under that mark of 20. And he assumed if I continue on one of the marketplace plans, and I'm paying for that coverage through the company, that I'm good to go. And here he was not. We got to him right in the nick of time in that 7-month window, the last month of it. Wow. And we're able to save him from having those penalties moving forward.
Yeah, and it really is so important. Speaking of that story, I got an email from someone this week, and they were talking about how, they got Part A back in 2020. They had just retired. They had retirement coverage. They told me the date they retired. They told me the date the coverage lasted to, and thankfully, they didn't get outside their 8-month window of losing group coverage and getting onto their Medicare. But there are so many rules. You referenced under 20. You got to know how it works with HSAs. You have to know how it works with COBRA. So again, but biggest thing, this initial enrollment period is generally that sign up when you're getting onto original Medicare A and or B for the first time, right? It can be pre-65, at 65, or post-65. Now, Lauren, if someone misses this enrollment, right, they meet all the different criterias and they miss this enrollment, they then roll up into the second enrollment we want to talk about, which is the general enrollment period. Talk to us about that.
So if you miss that window to enroll, you miss that initial enrollment period, like I had stated, the gentleman I helped was very close to missing that initial enrollment period window. If you miss that, if you go 8 months uncovered, and there's some different regulations within there, you could be assessed a penalty for not taking, again, those B and D coverage. However, what happens is every year at the beginning of the year, January, February, March is called the general enrollment period. So you have another chance to get on to Medicare at this time. Now, CMS, or the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, our governing body, they work to change these regulations kind of every once in a while. So we have these rules always ever changing, ever moving. So prior, it used to be you had this window from January through March to sign up, but your A and B would not be able to come effective till later in the year. That has changed, and I think this is a positive change for our Medicare eligibles. So if you go in that time frame, January, February, or March, and then you call into Social Security, you utilize the general enrollment period to now activate your Medicare A and or B, depending on what you did or did not do during that initial enrollment period, then it's going to start the next month after you've requested. So if you go in January, it'll start February 1st, February, March, April. Now, again, if you miss that general enrollment period, you're going to have to wait till all the way to the next January to sign up for that to get that Medicare coverage.
Yeah, and the way I've always explained it is it's really two penalties. If you miss that initial enrollment period, if you don't sign up for Medicare when you're supposed to based on all the rules, right? And then you have the 10% penalty potentially, right? 12 full calendar months of not being in a Medicare when you're supposed to. But then the secondary penalty was you got to wait, right? You can't just sign up right away. And it used to be prior to this year here, actually, that if you signed up in January, you had to wait until July. Signed up in February, you got to wait till July. March, you had to wait till July. Now it will go active the very next month. So that was a great change, as you mentioned, by CMS for people. But you still have to wait, which means you could go without medical coverage, or you'd have to pay full cost for the Affordable Care Act, because once you get 65, you can't get subsidies anymore for that. So definitely some important rules to understand. And again, if you're watching today, if you're within 12 months of going on a Medicare, maybe it's you're getting ready to be 65, maybe you've been on disability for a year, maybe you've worked past the age of 65 and you're looking at retirement. These are the things that we really specialize, right? So, Lauren, how can somebody get in touch with us to ask us questions about these things?
You can give us a call, 888-818-6334, 888-818-MEDI. You can look us up on Facebook, MediConnect PGH, on our Facebook page, or check us out online, MediConnect. And we have seminar listing on our website as well, so you can come out and see us. We love to host those, love to have you there. It's educational on Medicare and how it works and some of the things that we're talking about here today.
Yeah, so when we come back from the break, we're going to get into the next 3 enrollment periods and how they impact your decision making.
Medicare is confusing and a little scary.
Plan B, Part B,
HMO, PPO.
I feel lost.
Whether you're just starting Medicare or currently on Medicare, you're faced with critical decisions each year. Questions like, do I need a Medicare plan? Is my current coverage still my best option? Will I still be able to see my doctors? I'm Brian Breisinger with MediConnect, the area's premier independent healthcare advisory firm. We can help avoid costly pitfalls today and in the future. We can meet with you in person or over the phone. Choose an expert in your community.
MediConnect walked us through everything.
Best of all, it didn't cost us anything.
That's right. Our licensed experts can offer unbiased advice on all of your healthcare options at no cost to you.
MediConnect is a great organization.
MediConnect, bridging the healthcare gap. For no-cost advice, call 888-818-MEDI or go to MediConnectInsurance.com.
And welcome back to the Inside Connection podcast, powered by MediConnect. Once again, I'm your host today, Lance O'Brien, joined back with us again on the podcast, Lauren Yuran, and we've been talking about enrollment periods today. In the first segment, we detailed the initial enrollment period, which is a big one. It's an important one because that's how people get introduced to Medicare. And there's a ton of rules, right?
And not only is that how they get introduced, but that data gets out there as well. So that's when you get all the mail starting to come. That's when you get all the phone calls. Exactly. So that's where not only are you being introduced to Medicare, but you're getting advertisements everywhere you look, phone calls everywhere you turn, which again is one of the nice things about working with MediConnect, because we can take those phone calls, we can take those mailers, you guys can throw them out and give us a call if you have a question.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, that's the most difficult enrollment period to navigate, right? Because that's when you're learning about how Medicare works, that's when you're learning if the individual situations in your life impact how or when you get onto Medicare. So that is the most challenging one. If people mess that one up, generally they'll get to the second one we started talking about, which is the general enrollment period, right? And again, our whole goal with this podcast, our radio show, all the information that we put out on YouTube, Facebook, is so that they don't mess it up, right? So that's why we really want to be here for you. 888-818-6334. You can call us. You can come to one of our seminars. Go to MediConnectInsurance.com. Click on the live events seminars tab, and you can come connect with us. But in these last 10, 12 minutes that we have today, Lauren, let's talk about the last 3 enrollment periods. And the big one that most people know about is the one we're going to talk about next, the annual enrollment period. I call it the Super Bowl of Medicare.
And just like when you come on to Medicare at 65, this is going to be also the other time of year that you're extremely popular. Getting that mail, getting all this, because this is the time of year that you can change. And I always joke that for annual enrollment period, or as we call in the biz, AEP, that's the time of year where Lauren doesn't sleep.
You go into vampire mode.
Pretty much. We're out there. We're road warriors. We're coming to a place near you. We're coming to review plans. We have tons of advisors here. And, you know, my role as a manager is to make sure that they have everything that they need to take care of our customers.
Yeah, so we're mid-August now. We're starting to learn about the new plans that are coming out this year.
Which we're not allowed to talk about them until October 1st.
We can't talk about them till October 1st. That's when we can first start meeting with people for 2024. And then technically the annual enrollment period runs from October 15th to December 7th, with any annual enrollment decisions or changes made becoming effective January 1st. So who can change or who can review their coverage during this time, Lauren?
Anybody on Medicare.
Okay, so what does that mean?
So if you have a Medicare, if you have Medicare A and B, and you're enrolled into original Medicare, you're eligible for D, and it can literally be, if you're on a Medigap plan or a Medicare Advantage plan, you can look at the plans. And all these plans, like Lance said, we're not allowed to talk about it till October 1st. It's a CMS, or Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services regulation. All that information is coming out about what the plans are going to look like the next year. So this is your kind of time to shop, I think of it like.
Right.
You look at the different options out there. So some people that are on a Medigap plan and they have a separate Part D prescription drug coverage, if they want to stick with that Medigap plan, they can look at alternative rates and premiums and how their drugs are covered on those plans. And they could also look at an option of coming on to a Medicare Advantage plan, which we do see a lot of people do in that time of year. Or if you're already enrolled onto a Medicare Advantage plan, you can shop the other plans available in your area. And if you're on a Medicare Advantage plan, again, there could be some other regulations around it. We could look at maybe you need your prescription drug plan and a Medigap coverage as well that you may have to go through underwriting for. But really, we can look at everything that's out there available to you. And if you would like to change, we can help you change.
Yeah, and that's why, to me, it's the Super Bowl, if you will. Everybody's engaged, interested, and we really do believe it's important to review. You know, again, but we've both been doing this a while. You know, we know there's a lot of people out there, they get on a plan and they're just like, well, I don't have a lot of health needs. Everything's going well. They're not a high utilizer, another industry term, right? So they just leave things alone. What they don't realize, especially in the Medicare Advantage space, and I would say in the Part D space too, right? Because they change a lot, that there's been so many improvements or enhancements to these products. Like if you've been on the same Medicare Advantage plan for 5 years and you've not looked at what else is out there, you're missing an opportunity to really improve your overall health coverage. What are some of those enhancements? What are some of the things that we've seen that people would want to take a look at?
So, you know, just for a frame of reference, I've started in this industry about 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time that we started, and I was working for a company, and they offered a benefit for dentures.
Okay.
And that was under dental, right? So you can look at dental, vision, hearing, all those different types of things. But that plan, they were covering sets once every 5 years.
Okay.
When I look at what is out there now on the majority of these plans, it's a different level of ancillary benefits that are out there available for you. And again, I was talking about shopping, but you know, hear me out. It's time to compare these different benefits and see what you can get out of your plan. A lot of these benefits, dental, vision, hearing, over-the-counter catalogs or allotments, gym memberships. I've seen pet allowances on some plans. And when you're shopping for these and shopping based upon your needs, it can put a little bit more in your pocket. And also, you know, I've seen people just say, hey, my friend has the plan X and I want to come onto that plan and they told me about this, that, and the other. But it's really important, like you said, to sit down and talk to somebody like MediConnect and our advisors, because we're going to be able to talk to you about not just those extra benefits, but there's a lot of things that go into it. And I had a couple last year, they wanted to go onto a certain plan because her neighbor and her friend were both on it. And when we looked, the drug coverage was a $2,500 difference to another carrier's plan, where we were able to get her a lot of those ancillary benefits she was looking for, just maybe in a different way than she had heard about them from her friends, and see what her needs were.
Yeah, and that's super important. Again, our progression with all of our agents is we check the prescriptions first, then we check the physicians, right? We want to make sure that your prescriptions are covered well, your physicians are all in network if you're doing an Advantage plan, and then ultimately we'll look at plan benefits. But again, a lot of these things that have happened, 10 years ago, you had to have Medicare and Medicaid, and we don't have time to get into all of that, but to get access to it now, as long as you have Medicare, if you need transportation, there's debit cards available now, there's flex cards available now, you can get food for cardiac or heart issues. Like, there's so many options out there that people really owe it to themselves. And the challenge is, you know, there's over 70 plans, right? So, you know, to really weed through that, you could call every carrier per se if you wanted to, but it's just going to be a long process that can be simplified. But people, because the plans change, their health changes, the rules change, there's always new things coming out. There's all this stuff now about buybacks where you can get money back in your Social Security. Like, people really need to take advantage of this upcoming annual enrollment period, so that they can make sure they're in the best position for themselves.
And you had mentioned there's over 70 plans available in our area, Western Pennsylvania. I like to talk to this because I worked for a national carrier, and the plans that we have available to us and options that we have available to us are huge. And that is because there is a large amount of Medicare eligible. So there's a lot of competition, which a lot of competition brings a lot of choice. A lot of choice can bring a lot of confusion. And like you said, if you want to call 70 different plans, get the kits and read them cover to cover, it will help you sleep if you're insomnia. But again, if you give us a call, we can root through all that for you and work with you and bring that down to show you the options that are out there for you.
Yeah, so we're about 6 weeks away from getting into that. The fourth enrollment period, as we round the home stretch here, is the MA open enrollment period. MA there stands for Medicare Advantage. So this is actually an enrollment period specifically for people who have one of the two types of most common private insurance, and that's a Medicare Advantage plan. So big question is, when is this, and why have another enrollment period right after an enrollment period?
To make me run a little bit more. No, just kidding. So the MA open enrollment period, you're right. That's for folks who had selected a Medicare Advantage plan during the AEP, or maybe you stayed on the one that you were on prior and didn't get a chance to review your options. You get another chance to look and switch from like plan to like plan. So you can switch from Advantage to Advantage. So, you know, again, you have a second look almost, perhaps.
Okay.
So let's say that you didn't take a review during annual enrollment period, you got a second chance to take a look. And let's say you did switch, and for some reason there was something you don't like about the new coverage, you're not happy, you can actually switch back. So it kind of gives you a little bit more flexibility to choose to change a plan if you've stayed stable for a couple of years and you want to look at your options with the security that you could go back potentially during the open enrollment period.
Yeah, and that enrollment period runs from January 1st to March 31st, so it's another 3-month window with the coverage going into effect the very next month. So again, I get into the new year, I haven't actually reviewed my plan, I decide that I want to, I sign up for a plan January 18th, it's going to be effective February 1st, and so on. right? And then that leads us to the last enrollment period, which is the SEP, or the special enrollment periods. And what I always like to say here, Lauren, is the first 4 enrollment periods are based on the calendar. This one's based on life events. So what are the most common special enrollment periods people can qualify for?
The most common, leaving group coverage. We see that all the time for those folks that work past their IEP, past maybe their 65th birthday, and they continue to work and they have coverage through that work. But again, sometimes we don't know when we're going to be using this. I had a couple come into the office that decided to retire, and they had not looked at their Medicare options, had not educated prior to. So we had a lot of work to do within a 30-day time frame to get their paperwork through. So I encourage people that are thinking about that, or if they're continuing to work and staying on their group coverage, take a look at the options available on Medicare, because they could be more robust for you, or you just want to be in the know of whenever we're going to leave work, because sometimes we plan to leave at a certain time and then an opportunity arises or a life event arises and we need to leave that group coverage.
Yeah, so beyond group coverage, there's financial assistance, SEPs. Maybe you have LIS, which is low income subsidy. Maybe you qualify for the PACE program through the state, PACE or PACE-NET. You could be relocating from one county to another. There's all these 5-star plans out there, right? So the 5-star plans have received the highest rating from Medicare, and it gives people the ability to actually move throughout the year. And again, honestly, there's I think over 20 of these now. There was some that came from COVID and all these different things. So definitely something people want to be in the know about. Now, we had talked about at the very beginning, we want you to know what you're supposed to do, but we really want you to also know when you're supposed to do it. So Lauren, how do people get in touch with us? How can they connect? And then any closing thoughts you have.
Absolutely. So getting in touch with us, you can give us a phone call, 888-818-6334, to set up an appointment to have a review. No cost, again, for any of our services. You can check out our Facebook page, MediConnect PGH, or you can check out our website, come to attend one of our seminars. Again, no cost, no obligation, just good information, as we like to say.
That's it.
And closing thought, we ended up on the special enrollment periods. I think there's a lot of times where folks are eligible for an enrollment, whether it be income and they don't know they're eligible for programs out there that assist them that can lead to that, or just a life event and they feel like they could be trapped in their plan or don't know they have the option to look. So I think that just calling and setting up a review, because you could be eligible for a special enrollment that could really help your situation, is just one of those things that it's not going to hurt to take a look.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us. Again, a lot of information in a short period of time. We'll be back in a couple weeks with more information here from the Inside Connection podcast.